Hello, today I'm going to show you my game Horizon Infinity. It's quite simple. It's something I did like last year. So instead of 2D game, it being a 2D infinite platformer, I use 3D objects to kind of create that platformer effect as well. So this is the menu. I made all of these things in Photoshop. The Photoshop file should be included with the project files, I'm pretty sure. So here are the controls. So it's A and D to move, escape to go to the menu, and space for power up. But the power up works when you press it, but there's no visual feedback to show you that you have pressed it. So basically how the way power up works, when you press space once, it disables your collision detection, which means you can go through the actual obstacles without ending the game. Otherwise, you just, when you collide an object, you hit a game. There was an issue I couldn't solve. I had an extra screen, extra menu made for game over. I actually have an image on my screen, just have to kind of find it here. Should be in textures. Just give me 1 second. Textures, UI, menu, backgrounds. Yeah, I had a game over image made, but I had issues with setting it up. The way event dispatcher publishes the on-lose event. Okay, so obviously there is mute, there's no sound effects. I'm pretty sure you can't hear the sound effects inside of the game since Screencast Omatic, whatever the app is called, doesn't allow me unless I buy a pro version. And here we have the high score, which is being set in the game. I'll show that. So when you start, the score starts ticking. You can move with left and right, and the walls are going towards you. The main trick of the game is to avoid these walls and get a higher score. The walls are being generated procedurally using a random X position and a random X scale, so the width. So I'm kind of moving away from those walls here. Also, I added bound checking. It's a very inefficient way of doing this. So if I move to the side, it kind of glitches me out, but at least you can't jump outside the map. And same thing goes for the other wall. So I'll just kind of find a good spot here. No, I died. Okay, so when you die, you just go straight back to the menu. You get a high score here, so 258. So if your high score is greater in the next run, it'll save as that. I'm not saving the score to any text file, so the score will be reset when the game is reset. I'm not sure if you can hear this, but there's music playing in the background right now, and I'm just gonna mute it for now because it's disturbing me. Okay, so if you have noticed, when I pause the game, the whole counting up on the top of the score stops, and the platform spawning stops. Also, kind of regret the way I kind of taken out first-person camera from the code, because I didn't need it. But basically what happens is the obstacles are being spawned at the very back of this road, and when they go out of sight, which is behind me, they get destroyed. So I just wanted to achieve an effect of kind of this everlasting platformer that keeps going towards you. Okay, so I'll show you some code base now. I'll just move that here. Okay. So that's the code base. I'll show you some things in the main. I can just kind of close some things, build some anticipation as well. So apologies for the late upload, just only got back there. Okay. Also my Git version control, it doesn't really exist because I kind of forgot to keep track of my version control in general. But it does. My Git link does show the different commits that were made. I uploaded your base code and then I uploaded my base code, which would show the difference between our codes. Okay, So in properties, I made it kind of pretty simple. I made an obstacle ID, so every time an obstacle instance is being created, the ID of the obstacle itself gets added on with this obstacle ID that gets incremented over time. The main score is the score that you earn in the game while you're playing, and high score is static, and it's being set whenever you finish the game / lose the game. Some initialization, just change the name. Horizon Infinity, that's the name of my game. Load level 1, I'll show you. Load main level, I'll show you that as well. Assets, I took out a chunk of stuff I didn't need here because I thought, memory hogging. Pretty sure, very poor naming here. I added a font as well. I haven't used any curves or rails. Yeah, I have no excuse, well, not really excuse, I have no reason to do that, to explain why I didn't do it, so apologies for that. I wanted to use curves at the start, but my misunderstanding of event dispatcher kind of stalled me back a little bit. Okay, so main level 1, this is kind of very simple. I took your code for initializing a non-collidable ground and initializing collidable player, and I just added some parameters so I can tweak it more inside of this method itself. So I changed the ground height and the length and the width, so we can determine how long we want the ground to be. The player start position, X, Y, Z, and the player scale. Also at the very top here, just to keep track, Z towards the screen, X horizontal axis, and Y vertical. I understand. I also used the primitive helpers. Yeah, there we go. That you have used. It's just to kind of help me out with building the code itself. Took out some load demos. I wanted to add kind of a pickup for making you immortal or incollidable for a few seconds. But that wasn't added because there was some restrictions with the code, and I didn't really know how to code that fully for it to work with the way I wanted it to work. And what I wanted to do is to set up an alpha and a timer every time, every so often, that will give you kind of a little boost that you can use after. I guess that was, I focused on different things. Okay. Right. There we go. I added initialize score text. So that's the score text that's inside the actual game when you press start. So what happens is I create a text position and a scale just to keep everything neat. Made a transform. This integer to vector kind of, I think that was for, dimensions. I didn't touch them really. The actual object itself. Okay, so I gave it an ID, an actor type. Also, since it's dynamic, it's being drawn and updated. I used the transform color red, sprite effects none. I gave it what's it called? A depth buffer? No. What's it called? Oh no, there's none of that. Okay, rotation. No rotation. Okay. There was a thing I was looking at before. A layer depth. There we go. I just set it to 1. And I added to the UI manager. Okay, I didn't really add any effects. I'm pretty sure I didn't touch the event system either. Yeah, no, I didn't. Wasn't really much here. Okay, continuing on. I did some things in the update, so I guess I'll talk you through this, how I kind of got it to work. Okay, so that's your code. So set score text, basically it uses a predicate, or I'm not too sure how you call them, to get the reference to the UI text object from the UI manager. And I'm not sure, but for one of the managers, I wrote my own find function. So I guess I'll just quickly maybe check if that's the one I wrote. that's the one. So we return a UI text object, and we use an actor to the predicate, create a return text object, return text object. I typecasted it to a UI text object because they're inherited. Check if it's not null, and then return it. Otherwise, just return null, so there won't be any kind of hassle later on in our production. And then I set the score to main score. So that's while the game is running. Okay. Also, I spawn an obstacle every third of a second. So I spawn an instance. So generate obstacles. That actually should be generate obstacle, since it does it one at a time. So what I do is I check if the modulus of the current milliseconds equals 0. So every third of a second, and if the screen manager status type is not off, which means we are in the main menu, we're going to generate obstacles. Also, if screen manager status type is off, we also increment the main score. Otherwise, the score will increment while we're in the menu. Here I got a reference. I'll show you the method now. It's at the very bottom here. So what I do is I use a predicate again. Thanks to Roland, he explained to me how to find it using the opaque draw list. I use a predicate. X is kind of very poor naming. I get the ID that contains. I could use equals, but I use contains because maybe what if the player has like some kind of number in it, or some kind of naming issues. So just to avoid that in the future. Okay, anything else? Yeah, here. Okay, so that's kind of the main chunk of the code. That kind of does all the magic in this case. So if player collidable player primitive object get collision state, so I'll show you that now. The collision state in the player collidable object, I created a boolean called has collided, and what happens is where is this has collided? One sec. All references, return. There we go. So that'll be. So we're checking handle collision response. Then we do all the checks. So if it's a simple zone object, and then if it's a collidable primitive object, since player collidable primitive object inherits from collidable primitive object, and collidable primitive object, so on and so forth. They inherit each other, so we can check the actor types. So there's decorator, ammo, actor, and then I used architecture, a collidable architecture, as an actor type for my obstacles. And if the collide actor type on collision is that it just sets has collided to true. Okay, don't have much time, so I'll just explain this a little bit better. So here we check if we're not in the main menu, and also we check if the player the power isn't active. That's the power up I was talking about. So if main high score is greater than that, we set high score for the main menu. We set active list. That didn't work, by the way. I don't know why. I tried to get it to work because I have my what is this called? I used the game state manager so I created a register for event handling. I created player change. This worked actually, but I don't know what happened with it after. So if event type was on lose, I'd publish an event with on pause and to main menu. And that worked, and I don't know, basically what happened was whenever it turned on that lose screen, the mouse would get stuck and I couldn't return to the main screen. So that happened like that. Then I use reset, which a lot of commented out, and just resets the high score and clears the components. Generate random double, it just generates a random double between min and max. Generate obstacles, generates a random x pause between -9 and 9, and 1f, that's the width, and does it right here. And thank you for looking at my game.